Happy New Year, Kate.
Happy New Year, Roya.
We are in mid-winter, and winter's dregs made desolate the weaking eye of day, says Thomas Hardy.
Thanks, Roya. But now is the time to look ahead to Days of Joy Unlimited. I want you to imagine St James's Park in the height of summer, the soft heat of a London summer, a light breeze upon the waters of the lake, and a new presence in the park, a new memorial. Now we're casting ahead a few years, but it's a place, if you can imagine, where the nation and the world can remember the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, this country's longest serving monarch, and to whom thousands and thousands of us paid our respects when she died just over 2 years ago.
In this very special episode, the first of 2025, we're going to talk to some of the key people tasked to find the best way to celebrate the woman who was the strength and stay of the nation. With me are three very distinguished guests: the Right Honourable Baroness Valerie Amos, who served in Her Majesty's government and who is currently a member and former leader of the House of Lords; Alex Holmes, the charity leader inspired by the late Queen and Deputy CEO of the Diana Award charity; and the historian and director of the Landmark Trust, Anna Kay. Welcome to you all.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having us.
So let's get stuck in to the memorial. What's planned, what's proposed. It's an enormous undertaking. I mean, we've been talking about it and discussing how on earth do you memorialise someone as extraordinary as the late Queen, who had such a span in terms of history, legacy. Where do you start? And as people who are on the planning committee, how do you even start to throw those ideas around?
Well, we started by talking to a lot of people because I think it's a wonderful thing to be on the committee, but we're just a small number of people. And of course, she meant so much to so many people. So really, for the last 18 months or so since we were convened, a lot of the time has gone into sitting down with different groups of people in different environments in different parts of the country and really trying to kind of absorb what it is that people reflect back to us about what she meant and what the qualities are and the aspirations are for a memorialisation that's kind of appropriate to her.
Quite a tough task. I mean, some of the things we know have already been decided. So the cost has been set out there as a provisional construction budget of between 23 million and 46 million, excluding VAT, I believe. And that's going to include the construction of part of the Blue Bridge that goes through the park as well. But there's a timeline, isn't there, that takes us through the next few years. So you've opened it up on the 12th of December for applications for people to submit their ideas. And that's going to close on the 20th of January at 2 p.m. So what are you hoping to get in this short window in that deadline? Maybe that's one for Baroness Amos.
So obviously, we want a process that is open, that is inclusive. We want the best designers who are out there to come to us with ideas about how we can do this. This is such an important moment for the nation. This is about a monarch who served for such a long time for so many people in Britain. She was the only one that they knew. So how she is commemorated, both in terms of the physical memorial, but also what we do in terms of that longer term legacy, which we will come to at a later stage, is so important for us. We want a memorial that is beautiful, that speaks to that legacy, but is also fit for the future.
Can I ask, is there any particular criteria in terms of who can apply? I mean, is it particularly sort of sculptors you're looking for, or what's the criteria?
So we do not want to be prescriptive about this. There are a set of guidelines and principles that we have set out, and we are then looking to those artists, those designers, to come up with the best ideas that we have. So we don't have a preconceived idea about what this might look like. it's really important to us that the kind of creative juices flow from the best architects and designers that we have.
So are we to understand that this will be a kind of sculpture in the likeness of the late Queen, or could it be something completely modern and, something that doesn't look like her at all?
It's important that it reflects what the late Queen stood for, her legacy, but it is also about how we think about her in the future. And there are a number of words which people have come up with which reflect the contribution of the late Queen. So it has to embrace and embody the spirit, very much the spirit and the contribution of the late Queen.
And what are those key words? What are the key words that you have in your mind as a committee when you come to this?
So community, duty, contribution, that sense of keeping a nation together is very, very much at the forefront of the kinds of words that people have used when we have talked to them about this project.
Anna, Alex, can I ask? Obviously, you're on a committee and it's a sort of steering group and you're there to kind of formulate things and take things forwards. Is there any public consultation at all in this process? Because obviously the Queen, as Valerie said, meant so many things to so many people, probably the most famous person in the world during her reign. What's the public element of it and what input might they have?
Absolutely. So right from the moment this was announced by the Prime Minister, there has been an option for people to submit their ideas. So we do have a website, some information on the government website where people can submit ideas. And we have had some really creative and amazing ideas, thoughtful, and we've taken the time with the support of the Secretary in the Cabinet Office to respond to those. But yeah, that feedback's been incredibly important. And as committee members, we've been to Scotland, we've been to Wales, we've been to Northern Ireland, we've been to regions, and we've also been very thoughtful around actually connecting with young people, because I think the late Queen's had an unwavering belief in young people. In fact, she was a young leader herself. I think it was 25 when she came to the throne, and then 26 when she became a head of the Commonwealth. And even before then, I remember one of her speeches I think it was in Cape Town, South Africa, where she said there are no subjects in my father's kingdom, young or old, that I don't want to meet, I don't want to greet. And when we've spoken to young people, they've always remarked about how much of a connection and the sense of familiarity and closeness they have with the late Majesty. I think that's because it sort of runs through generations. She was there, she connected a lot of moments, whether that's, whether it's the Christmas television broadcast, and some young people, even in relation to that, said to me in one of the sessions that they thought she was the first monarch that saw in colour and saw in a new sort of digital era. And I think that's quite significant, the fact that she was did one of the first broadcasts in colour television and Christmas Message. But yeah, as a Queen's Young Leader, which was this programme that recognised young exceptional leaders across the Commonwealth, 18 to 29, receiving that award from her, I was always sort of really struck by how it didn't matter the fact that there were, I think it was 60 young people in the ballroom from 53 countries, and she was able to shake every single one of our hands and say, "I've been to your country probably more than one
Extraordinary.
time." Yeah, and I really do think she did embrace young people and how they see the world and how they connect with the world. The ceremony at Buckingham Palace, it was actually the first time that she gave permission for it to be broadcast, streamed live on social media, because she recognised that that's how young people communicate.
So this has got to be something that reflects that,
Yes,
that connection that she had to all generations, but also something that young people who've never met, who've born, since she died, are going to be able to connect with as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the most significant design projects in recent British history. Probably a question for Anna. What connection have you had with the palace and the royal household? Because presumably they're going, the king is going to want to see these designs and have some sort of input, although he's not on the committee. The late Queen's former private secretary Lord Janvrin is. So can you tell us what sort of connection your committee will have with the palace?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as a group, we've been kind of appointed, if you like, by the government and the king. So our, our sort of bosses, if you like, and our work are both. And when we've had our first kind of kick-off meeting, the King's Private Secretary Clive Alderton came along and talked about the project. And I know that Lord Janvrin, our chair, has been in communication with the King periodically about what we're up to. So I think it's we're very much aware, I guess, of two things. One is that ultimately this will be something that he decides to proceed with, but also that this was his mother. So we're very conscious, I think, of yes, of course, our job is to act as a committee recommending something on behalf of the nation. But this isn't. We're not just talking about a kind of sort of a political figure or something. This is also somebody whose family is very much with us, and so that's very much in our minds too. The need to be really aware of that.
Yeah.
How difficult do you think a project like this is when you're coming at it from a perspective of this really was one of the great historical figures in modern history, the late Queen she was, in terms of her span and her longevity on the throne, but also in terms of, we know over the years and over the decades, royal monuments to members of the royal family have had mixed reviews. So the Diana Memorial in Hyde Park, tricky opening when it first started, but now absolutely beloved by families. Children go there and play all the time in the water. It's turned out to be a very successful memorial. The statue in Kensington Gardens that was unveiled to her a couple of years ago, mixed reviews. More recently, we've seen other sculptures of Prince Philip and the Queen, mixed reviews. Fantastic statues, I thought, unveiled of them outside the Albert Hall last year. But it's really tricky to come at designing a memorial to someone so famous, so beloved by so many. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think you'll be pleased to hear we've studied all of those very carefully. And in fact, I tallied up earlier. I think I've been part of alone, and different members of the committee have been part of more. But I think there's been 40 meetings since we started.
Gosh.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Amazing.
at the start of the year. And some of those have been initially doing that sort of research and that scoping and looking at public perception, looking at what actually are visitor attraction numbers to some of our greatest institutions. And learning from that, so as well as those stakeholder sessions. But I suppose you can probably talk a little bit more about, the sense there and the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be realistic. Whatever is done, wherever this ends up, not everyone is going to like it, because we're just not a sort of we're not of a single mind as a population of tens of millions. So that, I think, one's just got to acknowledge that, and that's true. There's nothing that's universally loved by everybody in terms of works of art. It's the nature of these things. I think it's also the nature of these things that public opinion, feelings can change over time. So often things which have a rocky beginning might then come to be very loved. I mean, something like The Angel of the North, for example, was actually really controversial when it was first went up, and there was lots of
And you forget that now.
naysaying. You forget that now because it's really, really been embraced. So, and then something like, say, the figure of Churchill in Parliament Square, across the way from the Houses of Parliament. I mean, it's one that I think a lot of people really love, but it actually, you look at it and it's a really striking image, and, because he's there and he's old and he's kind of bent over with his stick and so on. And so I don't think it was a given that was going to be a really big success. So I'm holding up either of those as being kind of direct comparators. All I mean to say is that I think you've got to be quite sort of sanguine about the fact that you're almost certainly not going to end up somewhere where there's just sort of universal applause and everyone says marvellous, perfect. But I think what you can do is try, as Alex says, to really think about what have been the characteristics of things that have worked and things which have been less successful. You can really acknowledge that it's a big undertaking, and that if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly. So, the budget which you've referred to, it's a lot of money, but, I don't think anyone would thank any of us for doing something, as it were, on the cheap, and then ending up with something which is still a lot of money, but, a disappointment. So,
and even the timeline, right? So I think
Can I just add?
Yes, please.
There's a sense in which, we all have our personal reflections, I think, and ways in which, we think that this memorial should go. And that means that there are, millions of views and so many kinds of different expectations about what this should look like, what it should feel like, what emotion it evokes from all of us. And I think, part of our job is to recognize that there are going to be all of these kinds of differences, but the conversation is important. And at the end of the day, having something which reflects that contribution, that legacy, and which engages for the long term is the thing that is really important. And that different stages of their lives, I'm sure that people will have a different kinds of engagement with the memorial, and actually that's okay. In fact, it's a really good thing.
Now I was just going to ask you, Baroness Amos, what your personal reflections were on the late Queen and your relationship there, and what that brings to bear with you in this job now.
So one of the reasons that I was so delighted to be asked to be part of this committee is because, for about 4 years, I was Lord President of the Council, President of the Privy Council. It meant that I had very regular meetings in that role with the late Queen. The meetings were always very short. Privy Council meetings are held standing up. But, I was always struck by her kindness to me as the person who was leading those meetings. We had a couple of, very funny moments, which at the time were not funny at all for me.
What were they?
Where I made a couple of mistakes, and she never gave any kind of indication that she had noticed. But beyond that, beyond the kind of personal, I think for me, having a woman as our head of state for such a long time, who gave such wise advice to so many other heads of state because of the length of time that she had been doing that role. I know that she was a confidant for many, many other leaders. She played such an important role globally in a very quiet and understated way. And I think was able to give not just myself, but many other women a sense of how you could use power in a really effective way without appearing to exercise that power. She was wise. She reflected on a whole range of issues. She absolutely knew what was happening in the world. She used her comments very, very judiciously. She is someone that I really admired.
The wisdom there, isn't it? It just is the thing that sort of stands out. And how do you capture that sort of idea and element of generous, long-spanning wisdom in a memorial? You mentioned, Alex, that you've had some very creative ideas from the public.
Yeah.
I wonder, first of all, if you might be able to share what any of those might have been, but also, is it fair to assume, given the King's involvement in this, I mean, the King is quite traditional when it comes to his tastes in art and architecture, famously, particularly with architecture. Is it fair to assume that we'll be seeing something relatively traditional rather than abstract and out there?
Shall I answer that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't make that assumption because we haven't got to that stage, as you've said. We're at the stage where we've just got an open invitation for groups of people who are artists and architects to put their names forward to be asked to to be assessed, to be shortlisted, to come up with something. And as we've been talking about, we've got words and a steer in terms of design. I mean, I think it's unlikely to end up being a sort of metal spike with a.
Don't think you get that past the King.
But equally, I think. I think the King's got a much broader taste in terms of design than he's often given credit for, and we're really thinking about what's going to best do justice to to the subject matter, to the age, to the contribution that she made. It's a very historic landscape, so it's got to be appropriate for the site that it's in and so on. And all of those are really important factors to consider as well. So I think the thing to do, and we've talked about this a lot as a group, is we're not trying to design this ourselves. We're not the people to do that. We're trying to come up with a really thoughtful, carefully conceived process that brings out the best of really wonderful, creative designers, architects, engineers, and so on, to come up with something that's really going to live up to the stature of the person that we're celebrating.
Can you share what any of those creative ideas from the public have been? You got a wry smile, Alex.
Well, I would say
I want to know how creative the public are coming at this project.
Well, I would say that the 7 decades of leadership means that she really did mean something to so many different people. But I would say nothing is off the table. And as a committee, we are looking into how digital has revolutionized some of the attractions, and whether that's AI or AR. Really fascinated by that, but it's not for us to necessarily tie that. But I think some of the ideas, particularly that I felt have really strong, have been from some of the panels that we've done with young people. So whether that's a sort of like physical town square, because they felt that she brought together so many people.
Interesting.
What an interesting, and that's helped us think about the values and what she meant to people and how she connected, or whether it's a 6-year-old. From primary school, who really wants to be knighted by her and would love, it's just helped reinforce. And even some of the research that we've done and we've commissioned, there is a really strong sort of positioning and outset of actually majority of the great British public really do believe in this project and feel that we need to do something.
So you've kind of focus grouped this a lot. You ask what the public, what they think, what they want, how they... before you've even gone into it. So you've got an idea of how what people will want from this.
Absolutely. And I think when we first announced this and we said we're going to be announcing the plans April 2026, which would have been 100, I think some people thought, that's why so long? But you can see...
It's not really, because we think we've got a 20th of January deadline for this initial stage, and then in 2025, well, it will be this year by the time we come out, in spring you'll have that shortlist.
Yeah.
And then you're looking to have the long list by summer, and then the final design by the following April. So in between choosing the final winner in the summer and having that final design, presumably that's a point at which you guys get involved. And although you're not designing the project, you can see what's suitable and what's not, and cost the whole project and things like that. And that's when the final design will be. And then who knows how long it will take for construction, depending on...
these processes take time, because we don't know how many people are going to come forward by the end of January, putting in expressions of interest. Could be hundreds. So that needs to get from the hundreds down to the 5 we expect to be shortlisted, about that number, who will then need a period of time to actually work up a design, because the first phase is not asking for designs, it's asking for people, groups of people, of designers, architects, to put themselves forward as, on the basis of the work they've done to date.
Okay, so this is the initial stage, is just them saying, we're such and such architects, and these are the things we've done, we'd really like a shot at this. And
so that's the first phase. So that's where we are now. That's the expression of interest phase, which finishes towards the end of January.
Right.
Then on the basis of that and what they tell us about their work, we then get down to selecting from that great, hopefully exciting list of wonderful practitioners, a small number who then have a period of time of months to work up a design proposition. And at the end of that, which will be in the summer, that will be the kind of crux moment for determining from a series of actual specific proposals which of those we want to take forward. And then, of course, there's a process then of actually working that up in detail and costing it, and there's planning permission. There's all sorts of complications.
Is there a limit to who can apply? Do they have to be British citizens? Do they have to be from the Commonwealth?
No, they have. It's all on the details, which you can find online. But essentially, no, they don't. But they have to, meet a kind of bar in terms of experience, which as it were, couldn't be me saying I could just knock something up for you. You have to have a kind of professional standing that's appropriate to what we're doing.
Valerie, can I ask you? It sounds like a basic question, but why do we need a national memorial to Her Late Majesty? There are lots of statues and sculptures and memorials to the late Queen, to the late Duke of Edinburgh, all across the country. And as we've been talking about, she meant so many different things to different people. Is there an argument to be said that she could perhaps be memorialised in people's minds? Why do we need another statue or another, not necessarily statue, another national memorial? Why do you think it's so important?
I think it's really important to reflect the contribution of our longest serving head of state, who meant so much, not just to us here in the United Kingdom, but also to the people in Commonwealth countries, and also to the realms. Remember, there are other countries in the world in which our monarch is also their head of state. I think a lot of questions would have been raised if there were no national memorial to such an important figure through many different phases of our history. Our country has changed almost out of recognition in the time that she was head of state. And I think the important thing here is that there will be a legacy program which runs alongside that memorial. Part of who we are as a nation, we reflect through the people that we memorialize. And, for us, one of the important things, and one of the things that we have talked about a lot, is about how we today make a decision on something which will need to have such longevity. So this is about history, but it's also about the future. And it's about reminding ourselves constantly about the values and principles that she stood for that have been so important to our country's development.
Can I ask, Valerie, because you mentioned the Commonwealth there and how important she was, just not just as our monarch, but obviously as monarch of so many realms. To what extent, if any, have Commonwealth realms or Commonwealth members, of which she was head of the Commonwealth for so long, been involved or can get involved in this project?
So this is very much our national memorial. We anticipate that other countries will also want to remember the Queen in their own way. But we have been very conscious because this was something that was important for the late Queen herself, the Commonwealth and the realms. So we have been very conscious of that, and we have consulted and will continue to consult those countries.
It's even near the Commonwealth headquarters, isn't it, I suppose, the actual site. I'm thinking, going back to the cost, it's obviously a lot of money, between 23 million and 46 million. How do you arrive at that figure? Is that just something that the government looks at and that's what they can afford? Or is that something you've gone and asked for?
Especially if you don't quite know what the
it's
scheme is going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's important to say that figure is a sort of indicative figure, because you can't run an architectural competition without telling the people who are putting themselves forward what sort of scale it is in terms of budget. What it isn't is the cost of doing a very specific thing, because we haven't got the specific thing yet. But it is a working out which has been done in a very sort of well-informed way, based on the size of the site, based on the known cost of other, constructions and projects with some comparable elements and some assumptions about what things are going to be in there. And so it's a kind of envelope. It's not at this stage yet a kind of, okay, this is exactly how much it's going to be in, pounds and pence.
Yeah, and I think
we're also conscious of the fact, very conscious of the fact, that these are challenging financial times for many families and individuals across the country. So we really have to be conscious of cost. Value for money is very much at the top of our minds. We know that, finance and money could easily become a divisive issue, and we don't want it to be. This is a memorial which, for us, it's important that it's celebratory, that, as I've said before, that it's about, recognizing that significant contribution. So we are very conscious of the national backdrop and picture against which we are making these decisions.
And the legacy project that runs alongside, that's interesting as well. That's this idea that there'll be a kind of charitable element that will, you know, rather than just the kind of physical presence, there'll be this kind of, you know, element running alongside where we can actually help young people in their lives. And maybe that's something you can talk to, Alex? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a phase that we're really diving into now. And we are looking to do something that does, again, connect young and old. It's a similar challenge there, but that does recognise her contribution, her values. And we're still arriving on you know, what that might be, speaking to a lot of organisations across the UK that are running amazing programmes with communities, with intergenerations as well. I think that's something that's come up a lot, actually, how the Queen did connect generations. So yeah, we'd still love some ideas. So any listeners, actually, yes, you do
Send
find,
them in.
yeah, Queen Elizabeth Memorial Committee, do let us know, because we're still really listening and developing some ideas around that. But I wanted to be part of this because I think I recognise the potential of really doing something that does, that is long lasting, that does connect generations, and that does make a real difference. And that's definitely why I'm here. So I really believe in this, and also echo Valerie's points around, you know, this. It is an extraordinary project, and you know, she was extraordinary. But we really are taking this incredibly seriously and making sure that we are consulting as wide as possible and doing something that stands the test of time and hopefully brings smiles in the same way that she has such a great smile and brought so many smiles to people across the country.
Well, we really hope that whatever the final scheme comes up with, that fantastically wonderful, memorable smile will be there somehow. So just finally, can I ask, after this initial stage closes in January, when will we next hear from you? And will it be with some sort of shortlist of architectures and people who put ideas forwards?
Yeah, the plan is that once we've got to some actual proposals, that there would be, you know, those would be shared, and there'd be an opportunity for people to see them and give views before the before the final recommendation is made. So
it'll be quite an open process then.
Yeah, absolutely, because this is
It's
for
for
everyone.
everyone.
That's the whole point of it. So we're really, really keen to make sure that there's maximum opportunities for people to kind of participate, and that's the plan going ahead.
I think Anna's summed it up there. This is for everyone. Yeah.
She was for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for all coming in and joining us, and hopefully you'll come back and tell us who's been chosen eventually and why, and we'll look forward to seeing it in St James's Park.
we definitely will. So our thanks to Baroness Amos, to Anna Kay, and to Alex Holmes for joining us on this
Thank
very
you.
special episode. Thank you.